Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is episode number 136, dedicated to a man who was born on this day, September 21st, back in 1958. The former Detroit Piston, Mr. Rick Mahorn. And as always, thank you for listening and downloading to the episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we talk a little bit about the heated conversation the Celtics had after Game 2. The Big Ten has decided to join the party. Will the Pac-12 follow? And it seemed like on Sunday in the NFL, everybody came down with an injury. But first, this weekend. It's a weekend that I have looked forward to. It's a weekend that many of you have looked forward to as well. The SEC joins the party and begins their football season in 2020. Yes, it is. And let me tell you guys, as a college football guy, college football fan, there are certain things I look forward to every fall. One, the main one, Ohio State Buckeye football. That's the main one. That's the one that takes up a lot of my time on my Twitter timeline, when I read articles, podcasts. The Ohio State Buckeye football team, that takes up a lot of my time. Been a fan for years, and that ain't going to change no time soon. Sorry, fans of that team up north. Yes, we will still dominate you this year as well. As Ryan Day says, he wants to hang 100 on them. Yeah, wait for that game. Early December. I believe it's December the 12th. I hope y'all got to put on your calendars. Maybe you want to take it off because it may be a bad day. Maybe one of the worst days for you in the year in 2020. And 2020 has been a really, really, really bad year, guys. Just talk about what kind of beatdown is going to take place December 12th when Ohio State faces that team up north. But aside from the Ohio State love that I have a love for football, a love for traditions, a love for powerhouses. And when you think about it, go down to the Southeastern Conference. I know it's like an old guy calling it by the official name, the Southeastern Conference, but that's what it's called, and Jay's going to call it exactly what it is called. In this conference, things are just a little bit different. Yes, I like watching Wisconsin play. I like watching Penn State play. But the tradition in the SEC is way, to me, it's more exposed. It's now I won't say deeper, or it may be as rich as the Big Ten, but the SEC football is on a different level. It's not just on the field. It's not just the coaches. It's not just the fans. It's all of that put together and magnified on game day, but not just game day. We have all seen documentaries, 30 for 30s, SEC Storied, whatever you want to talk about when talking about the SEC culture that is down there in the Southeastern Conference, from Ole Miss to Florida, to Auburn, to Mississippi State, to LSU, to Georgia. I know Arkansas is not really good. They're trash, guys. I'll just be honest with you. Sorry. If any of you guys are down in Fayetteville, Arkansas, or any of you are just in that part of the country, sorry, I apologize. Your team just isn't that good. But I actually lived in Arkansas for a little bit, and I saw that even though they were not that good, those people they were ride or die for the Arkansas Razorbacks, to the point that I didn't even realize when I was down there. Arkansas Razorbacks, they play home games in two different stadiums. One's in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where the campus is. Then the other one's in Little Rock, Arkansas. They will take the trip back and forth. Of course, Little Rock more populated, more people. So you figured, hey, why don't we not just play here in Fayetteville? Why don't we play a game in another part of the state as well, in Little Rock, Arkansas? Alabama goes without saying. Texas A&M, I didn't really understand as a kid what Kyle Field and what that whole experience was like down there in Texas at a Texas A&M football game. But the older I get, the more I enjoy scenes like that. Tennessee, Rocky Top, Phil Fulmer. I know he's not there anymore. I think you guys have been trying to get over the hump of Phil Fulmer and trying to get back to where you once were in the late 90s and when Phil Fulmer was there. Hey, guys, it can happen. I don't think it's this year, but that's just the one thing about SEC football. Everybody goes into it. You may know your team's going to be bad, but you still go into it with the same fire, the same push to enjoy the game, to be the fanatic the fan, the fanatic that you are, and that's just something special about SEC football. This weekend we get some good matchups. We get a ranked matchup as well. We get Florida and Ole Miss. I'm looking forward to Kyle Trask. Kentucky and Auburn. Looking forward to Bo Nix. Mississippi State and LSU. How will their quarterback play? Georgia and Arkansas. Will DeJuan Mathis be the starting quarterback, or will JT Daniels be cleared medically cleared to play this weekend? Yeah, Jamie Newman is gone. Next man up, guys. Next man up for the Bulldogs. Alabama and Missouri. A lot of talk about Mac Jones. Bryce Young as well. I think Mac Jones will be the starter, but if Bryce Young keeps doing this thing as practice, he may get some PT as well. Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, South Carolina. Every school is rich in tradition. Every school brings it every single week, and you never know. You never know what could happen. This could be the year that Alabama doesn't win it. This could be the year that Georgia doesn't win it. This could be the year that Kyle Trask, in his first year as a starting quarterback with an offseason to prepare. He started last year, but this is his first season as a starting quarterback that he has had an offseason to prepare for the season. Will Kyle Trask have a Joe Burrow-esque season like we saw last year? Watch this weekend. Watch game number 1. You got to wait and see what that man does on the field. Let's go ahead and take a trip to the bubble down in Orlando at the Disney ESPN Wide World of Sports, because after game 2, there was a heated conversation after the Celtics lost to the Heat, going down 0-2. And that may have been what was needed to get the Celtics to snap back into it and play the basketball that we are used to watching them play. The NBA resuming the season down in Orlando, it has brought some, interesting stories. From Lou Williams to Daniel House to the players just first getting down there and putting the pictures on the Instagram about the food and the living arrangements, to the NBA allowing parents and family to come down to the bubble after the first round of the playoffs. This NBA resumption of the season has brought a lot of stories. And it brought one recently that, we may not have expected, but it could have been what was needed for the Celtics at that particular time. Marcus Smart is a player. He's a flopper. I will not hesitate to say it. He is a guy that he's a pest. You want him on your team. You don't want to play against him. But at the same time, he's a guy that is not afraid to speak his mind. That's exactly what he did at the end of Game 2 when the Celtics lost to the Heat and went down 0-2 in the series. And on the surface, you may be thinking, Jay, why are we talking about Marcus Smart? Why are we talking about this particular situation where he had to express his feelings in this way? Well, it's moments like these in sports when a player does express his feelings in this way that lead to possibly the team winning the championship down the road, because all they needed was that little push at that time to get them to get their mind right, to be able to get over what they thought they could not get over in that particular series. Marcus Smart. You love him. You hate him. You're not really sure what side of the fence you're on. Like I said earlier, you want him on your team. You don't want to play against him. And I will not hesitate to say it at all. He is a really good defender, but that man flops way, way, way too much. I mean, my goodness, man, when you're built like that, when you're that tough, when you're a guy that can get in the heads of other players, yeah, I know flopping gets in the heads of other players, but it makes you look foolish. I mean, I'd rather a guy stand up and stand strong and not flop than to flop all the time, get all flimsy, get I won't say weak. Get a little weak when you're thinking you need to flop a little bit. Man, come on, Marcus, you ain't got to do all that. No, sir, you don't. Don't flop. It's annoying. If you're in my shoes, if you're at my seat watching you play basketball, you may say, hold on. I know it may get the competitive advantage and get a foul called. At the same time, me flopping all the time makes me look a little flimsy. And when I do that, it could ultimately lead to the other team getting an easy 2 points, which could be what they need to win that particular game. All about the flopping. I could go on and on and on about my disdain for flopping, about why I can't stand it, about why I think it actually fits the way these players play today, the way they think today. But I will say this. Marcus Smart speaking up and expressing his feelings about how he felt at the end of game 2 could have been the perfect thing the Celtics needed at that time. Because if you have watched this series, you have seen, and I've watched people, even after the game 3 loss that the Heat had, I have heard people talk about how the Heat are just this team you can't beat. The Heat are just this team that whatever it is that Pat Riley and Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler and Iguodala when he's playing just a few minutes, and these other players, Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson and Bam Adebayo, and all these players, Kendrick Nunn, Goran Dragic, all these players, when you're thinking about what they bring on the court, people are like, hey, this Heat team, y'all, I know they just lost this game, but you can't beat them. Excuse me? I mean, they literally just lost. So I'm thinking in a literal sense. Like, they literally just lost this game like a couple hours ago, and they're saying you can't beat them. Are you watching the same thing I'm watching? But then they go on to explain, like, yes, now when I say you can't beat them, you could beat them in a game. I mean, people are going to lose. No one's going to go undefeated. I mean, even some of the best basketball teams you've ever seen, 72-9, 72-10, 73-9. I mean, even in the regular season, somebody's going to lose. I mean, if you go to the NBA playoffs and talk about those kind of records, I think in the 0-1 playoffs, the Lakers only lost one game, and that was game 1 of the NBA Finals when Allen Iverson went off, and that was the only loss they had. I can't think of that. For some reason, that comes to my mind more prevalent and more quickly than the ones that have happened in more recent memory. But yeah, I mean, you have teams like that all the time, but eventually, someone's going to lose. It's going to happen. But this Heat team, what they have been doing in the bubble, not just in the bubble, but throughout the entire season, they have been building and building and building and building and building to this point that we're at in the Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah, they weren't thinking that they were going to play in Orlando or they would be stuck in a little bubble, quote-unquote bubble, where you're in a hotel and you can't go anywhere. There's a campus there. You could go outside and do things, but it's not like you could go across town or go across country or go overseas and do all of that stuff. No. Nothing of that sort. But people are literally believing it. If you watch this Heat, they are playing at a level that's going to be tough. Not just for the Celtics to beat, but the Lakers to beat, because I don't believe the Nuggets are going to win that series over there in the West. I mean, that's a story for another day. But the Lakers last night, my goodness, they looked so good. Even to the point that I didn't think that the Nuggets would be able to come back, and then AD hits a shot and hits a 3 to win the game by 2. And they say it's the jerseys, the mama jerseys. We do this thing. I'm like, okay, cool, man. Good for you. Maybe you want to wear those jerseys the entire time, but that might not be what is called for by the team. But we all remember back when the Cavs won the NBA Finals. I forget the year that it was. The Cavs wore those same jerseys quite a bit because they just played so well in them. But this Heat team, they're good. They're a well-oiled machine. They're tough. They play defense in a way that a lot of people don't play defense in the NBA. Spo is making the right adjustments. But even when you think about everything the Heat have done in the playoffs and in this series, the Celtics were the team going into it that many people believed they had what was needed to take down the Heat. They had what was needed to be able to move on to the NBA Finals and to honestly have a legit shot at winning the championship this year. And then the Celtics run into the Heat. And then the Celtics figure out, whoa, are we ready for this situation? Are we ready for this battle? And when you look at it, you would think no. You would think that they're not. But then after game number 2, after that loss, Marcus Smart had enough. I ain't mad at him. I'm right there with him. I'm right there with Marcus Smart. At some point, somebody has to speak up. Somebody has to light a fire under these players' belt. Somebody has to be the one to say, hey, y'all, cut that out. We can't do this. Let's go ahead and do what we do, play our brand of basketball, and let's win this series. I know we're down 0-2, but we're better than this. We are a team that can overcome this obstacle. Yeah, being down 0-2, it's not the best. It's not the most enjoyable type of situation to be in, But we can't do this, and I am very glad that Marcus Smart did what he did. I am not a person that hates these conversations, that think that they should not happen in sports. I will tell you this, just like Draymond Green, I didn't pull the sound for this at all, but he basically talked about how a winning team has conversations like this more than you would think. A losing team is the one that does not have conversations like this because they're losing. They don't have the desire to push back and to fight back and to go ahead and do what's needed to get under someone's skin so they play better. I mean, the Bulls, think about the Lakers. I'm sure those Rockets teams had disputes as well. The Spurs, I mean, all these teams, the Warriors of recent memory, all these teams, they have had, and I'm sure, numerous conversations like what we had, like what we heard about with Marcus Smart after the game on game 2, where they said, hey, look, y'all, we got to stop this. We got to figure this out. I mean, I watched, if you go to the YouTube, and it's a series called I Am Athlete. Channing Crowder, I think it's Channing Crowder, I forget his name, it's a linebacker, used to play for the Dolphins. But you have Fred Taylor, you have Reggie Wayne, you have Brandon Marshall, a receiver that does a lot of stuff on media. Well, they have a little video podcast that they do that is phenomenal. Just 4 athletes talking about football. At one time, they had Chad Johnson on there, and I love the back and forth between Reggie Wayne and Chad Johnson when they ask who the better receiver was. I loved it. Loved every second of it. But one thing I noticed with these players is that when Reggie Wayne spoke up and said that he yelled at Peyton Manning, Crowder, I know it's his last name, I forget his first name, but Crowder spoke up and said, hold on. Time out, Reg. You yelled at Peyton? Hold on, you yelled at the quarterback? And Reggie Wayne's like, yeah? I mean, he puts his pants on the same way I do. I ain't scared of that man. But that happens more than you think. In football, as a Colts fan, back in those days, I know numerous times that the offensive line and Peyton Manning yelled back and forth at each other. We see it with Tom Brady. Well, we did. We haven't got that deep into it yet with his years with the Buccaneers or tenure with the Buccaneers. Not sure if it'll be a years or multiple year thing. But we know in New England, we know for sure. Maybe you haven't heard a story. But there ain't no way. I'm going to use an ain't. My mama says don't use ain't, but I'm using it right now for emphasis. She may hear this and get on me, but Mom, you'll understand. There ain't no way those Patriots fans, those Patriots teams weren't as good as they were to get to the Super Bowl as many times as they did, to go ahead and win as many rings as they did, and they didn't have any disputes. They had no disputes. There ain't no way. This is more normal than you think in football. I mean, my goodness, I even had a story like that, and I was a top-tier athlete. I just didn't like people taking plays off, taking reps off. I didn't like that at all. I'll tell you about it. Junior year of high school, we're doing summer conditioning, and we were running 40-yard dashes at the end of practice. It's two-a-days. It's hot. I know some of y'all think two-a-days is old school. Jay, how old are you? This is in the summer of 2005. So it wasn't super old. But it was the summer of 2005. I say summer. It was August. Two-a-days, hot in the summer, 100 degrees, full pads, twice a day, 2.5, 3-hour practices. Yeah, it was hot, baby. It was hot. And when you get hot, when you're getting tired, you get irritated very, very quickly. So it's me. I'm running on like near the right hash of the field. The right hash, go in line, go line to the 40-yard line, back and forth. And our rival, Lawrence North High School. Some of you may know that school by the name of Greg Oden or Mike Conley or Eric Montross. To go back some ways, back to the late 80s. That's a school that I went to, or that was my rival. My school, Kyle Guy went there. Cam McGrone currently plays football at the University of Michigan. So that's kind of how that goes down, the connection of my school and the school that's my rival. Well, at the end of running sprints, and in the weight room as well, they always had one more rep for LN or one more for LN. Lawrence North can nickname him LN. Our nickname is LC for the high school, Lawrence Central. So that's kind of how those things got put out. One more for LN. And for some reason on this day, there was a receiver that I still talk to this day. Like, I don't have any ill will, nothing. I mean, we yelled at each other the next day. We're cool. Like, it's football, it's practice, it's whatever. But that day, we were running. I'm a lineman, wide receiver. I got a little irritated with. He's really good, actually. Really good. he was running sprints, but he was taking some plays off, man. I mean, not plays, but reps. I mean, you're running back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We had a very, very, very long, heated practice. It was hot outside. I can't talk about that enough. It was hot outside, and I'm just sitting here thinking, hey, you're a receiver. I'm a lineman. I weigh more than you. You're faster than me. Why in the world am I keeping up with you on these sprints? I'm not that fast. You are fast. You probably run a 4.5. Let's not talk about my 40 time. It's very, very embarrassing. But there is no reason why in the world I'm keeping up with you. 4.5, 4.6 for the receiver, probably closer to a 4.5. What in the world are we doing this for? It's for some reason they said, let's do one more for LN. And Jay got the bright idea to speak up. And I think it was perfect for this time. I have no problem with it. I am not ashamed that I spoke up. But I yelled and said, hey, Chuck, are you going to run this time because it's for LN? And let me tell you, y'all, I remember Coach Barthel, the other coaches were out by the 40-yard line or a little bit closer in than to us. I looked at Chuck. He looked at me. He got in my face. Teammates had to break us up. We ran. We went to the locker room. That was it. That was it. Coaches didn't break it up. Coaches didn't come in and say, hey, cut that out. We ain't doing that on the field. No. This ain't it. There is something about sports that when you push somebody back, if they don't come back at you, you can tell a lot about yourself and a lot about the other person. And that's the same way it is with the Celtics. If Marcus Smart didn't speak up, would they have a chance? Would they have won game 3? And I had a Celtics fan say, Jay, they're not going to have practice the next day on Wednesday. So who cares? I got a problem with that. I personally don't have a problem with that. You may think, we're down 0-2, we need practice. Maybe what y'all need is to just relax a little bit, talk things out, give your legs a little bit of a rest. If you've been playing every other day for so long, give your legs some rest, talk it out. Because I remember Brad Stevens called a meeting, I believe, at 1 a.m. in the morning after that loss, after game 2. He said, hey, y'all, look, we ain't going to sleep yet. We got some stuff we got to hash out right now before this game is over. Before we go to sleep, before this night is over, we got to figure this out. Because we're better than this. We are way better than this. And I went back and looked at some stats from the first couple of games. Something that I think is very telling about how the series has gone for the Celtics right now. Game number 1, even though it ended in overtime, the Heat won the battle with the points in the paint 48-26. Now in game 2, the battle was closer. Heat 44, Celtics 46, and that could have been exactly why Marcus Smart was so upset. We're playing in a way that we should win this game. We didn't close it out, and it's not acceptable. Now, Heat and Celtics game number 3, and this is what I believe Brad Stevens talked about at the end of quarter 3 in the in-game interview. I forget who the sideline reporter was at this time, but they talked about this very thing. How the Celtics are winning the points in the paint and how it was really helping and fueling their offense. The Celtics won the points in the paint battle 60-36. Inside-out basketball, I know it's all about threes and layups and not moving the ball inside like that, depending on the lineup. But, guys, I will tell you one thing. If you want to have a really good shot at winning a game, getting points in the paint, no matter if it's a big man, no matter if it's a pick and roll, and no matter if it's a give and go, no matter what it is, no matter if it's a fast break, transition bucket, no matter what it is, getting points in the paint, make those outside shots that Marcus Smart has been hitting at a higher clip than anybody could have imagined, a whole lot easier. The Celtics, many people hated that Marcus Smart spoke up like he did and got in the face of his teammates and challenged his teammates. But that's what sports are about. That's what we love about them. It just happens to be that this time, this conversation was exposed to put on Front Street for us to hear about. Not like so many other times where things happen in the news, in the mainstream media, those beat reporters, they don't talk about it. Before we begin talking about the Big Ten's decision to play football right now, we have a word from Plutus Sports Analytics. Plutus Sports Analytics is a company based on minimizing the uncertainty in sports betting to help you maximize your profit. New Finland's first sports analytics team provides daily predictions for all Major League sports so you can win big. Whether you want to hit MLB picks out of the park or get a slam dunk on your NBA betting tickets, Plutus is a company of choice. Head to PlutusSportsAnalytics.com. That is PLUTUS sportsanalytics.com. Use code JSP10 for 10% off their deadly service. The Big Ten has decided to join the party and play football in the fall of 2020, where they can play in the college football playoff. And with such a great and amazing announcement, I believe that we should all stand up. Not in your car if you're standing in your car. Don't do that. But stand up if you're just sitting out at home with your family eating. Literally, stand up, stand up, stand up. All of you, stand up. Are you up? You out of your seat? All right. Hand clap. This kind. Make it loud. Make it proud. Sorry, guys. I got a little excited. Like I said earlier in the beginning of the show, Ohio State football fan. We'll be starting an Ohio State football Buckeyes show pretty soon. I talked about that like a month and a half ago, it seems like, but now I can actually announce it and put it on Twitter and start the show very, very soon. Be looking on Twitter for that. I'm very excited if you can't tell. But the Big Ten, getting to this point, as David Cobb stated so well last week, they kind of looked a little odd making this announcement, getting to this point in time. The SEC, Greg Sankey, we all talk about the SEC, how football's different down there, but also the way that he came to his decision to not just handle the situation, when to schedule, what to do, what protocols to utilize. It was with a very cautious, educated approach. Educated meaning that even if he did not understand the health ramifications of what's going on, he also knew there are people in his corner around him that could help him with this. Not like the Big Ten that wanted to be the trendsetter and said, oh, if we don't play, we already know our sister or little sister or twin, the one that we can't really stand, but we play them every year, the Pac-12. We already know they're going to follow us and not play. ACC, you're next. Big 12, you're next. And then in the Lone Ranger will be the SEC, the Southeastern Conference. You'll be forced to follow us as well because you guys will not only play, you guys will not be the only ones playing this year. Nope. You're going to follow us too. Well, the SEC didn't follow you. The ACC didn't follow you. Notre Dame went to the ACC to play this year. The Big 12 has not followed you. The Pac-12, well, I'll get there in a second. And the Big Ten is left looking at, we're in a bind because nobody's following us. We wanted to be the trendsetter, kind of like follow the leader. You know that game, follow the leader? Well, we wanted to be the leader, but nobody followed us. I thought we were popular. Maybe we're not. I thought that people cared about us. Maybe not. I thought people wanted to watch us play football, and they would not watch football without us, but Miami and Louisville was fun to watch on Saturday night, and, well, we got the SEC football coming up this weekend. Maybe we're not as important as we thought we were, and that's exactly what I believe happened with the Big Ten. They thought they were bigger and smarter and better than they were, and when it came down to it, nobody cared at all. I go back to UConn, who's a lesser conference. You think a lesser conference, not even going to be able to play football right now because of, I believe, financial reasons, having to pay out to leave the AAC. I'll remind you, a $17 million payout to leave a conference, and financially, it was better for them to not play than to play. With them paying the bulk of that $17 million over this year and next year, they figured, why are we going to pay that and then also pay for this testing and all these, not just antigen testing or Rona testing, but also other things that go on with that. Why are we going to do all this at one time? Doesn't make no sense. So they didn't do that. The Big Ten, other schools, they could have done that. They were worried about liability and getting sued. Well, the players from Nebraska, they did that, and they really got what they did. Well, for the Big Ten sets, they got what they didn't think was going to come to them with a very, very, very tough schedule. But it's the Big Ten. There were good schools out there, and the officials in the Big Ten didn't like what you did, and this is the effect of what you did to them. But the Big Ten's playing. I'm happy, if you can't tell. Get to watch Justin Fields play again. Trey Sermon, I've been looking forward to watching this young man run the rock, tote the rock all summer long. We finally get to watch that. Chris Olave, Shaun Wade, which that announcement, I will say this very quickly. Shaun Wade, I understand you like the attention. I understand all of that. but from your decision, the way you announced you're coming back for another season with the reporter, I believe from Buckeye Grove or Buckeye Scoop, one of the two, going down to your home in Jacksonville, Florida, bringing a camera and doing this from the outside. Maybe it may have been a cell phone recording the video. I'm not really sure, but going down there and having an announcement that way, having the reporter go down to your home in the back where your pool is, where it's covered. You're just saying, I'm doing an interview, about 4 or 5 minute interview where you are announcing that you're coming back for another season of Buckeye football. And then to the way that you opted out of playing this season. Well, not just the way you opted out. You said you're going to opt out. But at the same time, that same day, Marty Smith of ESPN had you on his podcast, which made me think that Marty Smith already knew. I don't knock it if you already knew, but you went on there and you had an interview very, very quickly, and then to the way you're opting back into the season to go ahead and put me on ESPN. Even your dad tweeted out, and I don't follow Randy Wade, but a lot of people that I know follow Randy Wade or like his tweets, so I went ahead, I saw the tweet on the timeline. As you know, Twitter will expose other people's likes on your timeline. Sometimes you care, sometimes you don't. One of those things about Twitter, you either love it or you hate it, and you're really not anywhere in between. Maybe you be. I'm in between there. I'll go ahead and say that. But Randy Wade even came out and said maybe we should not have done this announcement on ESPN. But lo and behold, or Buckeye Nation is what we do, or something along those lines about how he felt about this announcement being on ESPN. But then Shaun Wade did announce that he was opting back in via ESPN. Wyatt Davis, potential first-round pick, this upcoming NFL draft. I believe he's an offensive guard out of Ohio State. He's opted back in, waiting for players like Micah Parsons or Rashad Bateman or Rondell Moore, other players throughout the Big Ten to say, hey, we're going to come back. We're going to come back. We're going to come back. I mean, you're waiting, and you're waiting to see it all the time. But then there's a school on the West Coast, at USC, when Keaton Slovis, their quarterback, wrote a letter stating that he wants to play. Let them play. You have schools, you have MAC schools and Mountain West schools, Mountain West Conference, MAC Conference, Pac-12 that are saying, whoa. If the Big Ten's playing, we can't be left out. We want to play too. And guys, if you guys would have just waited, and utilized maybe some of the wisdom, some of the knowledge that the other conferences that are already playing utilize, you would have realized that you can play football right now. I know that nobody wants to get the Rona. I know it's scary. I know there's news coming out every single day that you don't want it because of the long-lasting effects, that it's not as potent as it once was, or that it ever was, or we kind of overhyped it. Whatever side of the fence you're on, you can play football right now. We're seeing it on all levels. We have seen Little League sports down to 4, 5, 6 years old being played throughout this entire time, never be canceled. Lo and behold, people don't want college athletes to play. I understand it. I understand the hesitation. I understand people having died, people having family members that have died from the virus. I get all of that. I truly do. I myself have had family members that have had really harsh effects from the virus. I don't talk about it on here because I don't feel like it's the time and place for that. But for the conversation, it does fit. And I will say, the Pac-12, you couldn't be left out of this. Now you know at the Big Ten, and you're just in a weird relationship. You didn't like that back in the late 90s, late 80s, when the late 80s and then 90s, throughout the 90s up until 98, the Bowl Coalition, Bowl Alliance kept you out of the running to be in the running for the national championship. You had to wait and see how the voters voted at the end of the year. And the Rose Bowl, you guys wouldn't break your contract. New Year's Day, I love tradition. I love all that stuff. But then now, even after all of that stuff, we're not in the Bowl Coalition era, Bowl Alliance era. We're not in the BCS era. We're in the college football playoff era, and the Rose Bowl, even though it has ties to you guys, your two conferences, I mean the Big Ten and Pac-12, what we're finding out is that even in this year, it's a semifinal game, so it's not like the winner of the Big Ten, winner of the Pac-12 has an automatic bid to play in the Rose Bowl. But lo and behold, you knew that if the Big Ten decided to play, you guys would follow right after them. Not lockstep, not hand in hand, not walking in unison. No, but you'll follow right after them. That's what we're seeing. Very confusing. I don't get it. I think you guys kind of jumped the gun. I do think that the health and safety protocols, a lot of people went back and said with the Big Ten that they didn't like that it's a 21-day layoff in between you testing positive and being able to come back. Well, I do understand it. If I was a player, I would hate it. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. If you test positive, it's a 14-day self-isolation period. I don't like using the other word, the Q word. I'm tired of hearing it. So I'll say self-isolation. It's a 14-day self-isolation period. You can't hit. You can't work out. You can't do anything. So for that 2-week period of time, you can't do anything. So they're saying for the 2-week period of time, nothing at all. No hitting, no working out, no weights. You can watch film, you can watch games on your room, but that's it. All of a sudden, what they want you to do for the next 7 days is to get your body physically conditioned for football again. Those that didn't play sports, those that haven't played sports in a while, or those that maybe have never played, or those maybe it's been so long you don't understand, maybe you guys have forgotten, it takes your body a while to get acclimated physically. Your body, especially with hitting, you got to be a little callous to the hits, to the condition. And I think what the Big Ten is saying is, look, you can be out 14 days, but you got to get your body ready to play a game again. You're not just going to go take a 2 weeks off and then no practice, no hitting, no nothing, and then go right back out there. I definitely get that. But Pac-12, will you come back? Wait and see. I believe I've heard that an announcement will come or should come no later than Thursday about their chance to come out. And imagine, all it took was for Larry Scott to talk to Governor Gavin Newsom of California, and he says, whoa, we aren't restricting you from practicing and playing. As soon as that conversation happened, wow, look at that. Things are happening quickly, rapidly to get those boys on the field and playing. Now imagine if that conversation took place back in June, middle of July, late July. The Pac-12, unlike the Big Ten, probably would have not made an announcement to postpone or cancel, whatever you want to call it, their season. They maybe have started this weekend with the SEC or last week and the week before. They could have let the Big Ten as to be the Lone Ranger and to be the only one left out to dry, not playing. But that's not what happened. They thought they couldn't play. Yeah, and that's the way the cookie crumbled. I will say this, though, like I said earlier, I personally don't know if with the fires and things going on the West Coast, if they would be able to play. But if those weren't there, and Larry Scott talked to the governors of those states to see what the protocols are, I just bet you the Pac-12 would have played, and the Big Ten would have been trying to figure out who they could pull out of the game with them. And then if nobody followed, they may have decided to play and not postpone this thing as well. Postponing things, we don't like them. In the NFL, they aren't happening. But what's happening right now, what took place on Sunday, is not the postponement, but a lot of players' seasons got canceled. They're over. They're not playing anymore this particular season. As I'm watching football on Sunday, started with the Colts and the Vikings, and the Colts, oh my gosh. I was so surprised at how the defense played, but I knew the defense could play that. But after the game last week against the Jaguars, or Gardner Minshew, I believe he went 19 for 20, had a Drew Brees-esque completion to attempt ratio, and I'm like, hey, y'all, what's going on? What is this? And then this weekend, you go from Gardner to Kirk. You go from a running back on the Jaguars nobody knows to Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook had 25 rushing yards on the first series, and then, the defense showed up and played. It's amazing how well a defense can play when they're not on the field for 8 to 9, 10 plays every single drive, that every single time they're on the field. Give them some rest. Yeah, they can play like the all-stars or the potential Pro Bowlers that they are. But not just that game, as Malik Hooker, as Paris Campbell went down in that game, but all throughout the games on Sunday, it seems like more and more people were getting hurt. And this went back to week one. We saw a lot of injuries week one. Remember I talked about Michael Thomas on one show I was on, Le'Veon Bell on a show I was on. I mean, there's so many players that have just gotten hurt between week one and week two. And you've heard me talk about how I am a big proponent of preseason, not just for the evaluation process of these athletes to make sure they can get on a team, they can play on a team, not just that. I'm a big proponent of the preseason process so the body can get used to getting hit. The body can get used to making these cuts at game speed because, as I heard Mike Mayock say recently on the Rich Eisen show, you cannot simulate game speed. All of us have played, a lot of us have played sports before, and we know that a game speed is different than a practice speed. I know my buddy Jeff Hunt, hosts a podcast, really good at that. He talks about, he's a runner, and I used to do some running as well. We got to get back into it, slowly getting back. But one thing I will say is when I was a runner, my practice speed was different than my race speed. Now, I'm not saying running in high school. I was a runner, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, that kind of runner. As an adult, you pay X amount of dollars to run in a race, get a t-shirt, get a medal. Yay, I'm getting a participation trophy. Don't really like them, but in that instance, I do kind of like them. But yeah, so you're running, and I found out quickly my practice pace that I was utilizing to practice, that's different than my race pace, as far as me running a 5K or a 10K or a half marathon, whatever it was, that pace was different. It's the same way with football, with basketball, with baseball, whatever it is, that pace that you have during practice or your warm-up races or your practice races is completely different than that during an actual game or a race. And possibly, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but maybe, just maybe, the lack of preseason and the lack of hitting and the lack of getting used to making those cuts and those moves and getting hit in that way, getting hit at game speed in the preseason, even though the starters don't really play, they still need that time period to ramp up. NBA, I don't see them going and getting way of NBA preseason games. They may cut down on how many, but they won't cut down on it. Spring training in baseball, I don't see them getting rid of that. NHL, my goodness, they need it as well, just like everybody else. So the NFL's one that they want to cut down on it this year. There was no preseason, a fear of the virus being pushed back and forth between players that are in close contact with people, even though from what I've read, to get the virus, you got to be within 6 feet of somebody for a 15-minute period of time, continually, consistently. I don't really think that anybody out there, unless you're on the sidelines, is going to be that close to anybody at all, to where it's within 6 feet for a 15-minute time without any separation. Of course, that could be wrong, could be false information. That's just from what I thought I had heard and read about how this virus has passed on through people. But we saw so many players. I got a list here, just a few, not all. Just a list of a few players that went down to injury on Sunday, and it makes you wonder. And my buddy Brian, who's been on the podcast recently, said this on Twitter. It makes you think, it makes you wonder who was doing their proper workouts outside of team-appointed workouts, team group workouts. Because if you're working out on your own and doing those things, yeah, you can't hit, but you can do those cuts, you can do those moves, you can do those lifts. So when you get on the field and change things up for the way the season is, yeah, you can get out there and actually be more conditioned for what's going on. You got Saquon Barkley went out with a knee injury. Sterling Shepard with a toe injury. Jimmy G with an ankle. Nick Bosa with a knee. Solomon Thomas with a knee. Raheem Mostert with a knee. Drew Lock with a shoulder. Paris Campbell, another injury, a knee. Malik Hooker, an Achilles. I believe he's out for the season. Anthony Barr with the shoulder. Mike Boone with the concussion. I mean, this is just a few people. Quincy Wilson, Jets cornerback with a concussion. Byron Jones with a groin injury. Caleb McGarry with a knee injury. I mean, there's more players out there that went down to injury on Sunday. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the actual thing is, but it makes me wonder, like my buddy Bryant said as well, what players were actually out here doing their own workouts during this time period? You could say, Jay, they couldn't go to the gym. Okay, that's cool. That ain't going to stop you from going to the backyard and doing some stuff by yourself. I mean, my goodness, you don't have to have somebody with you to work out all the time. Yes, it's nice. It's better with certain things. You don't need somebody with you all the time. What we're finding, teams may say, hey, we got to have a preseason. We got to have these team workouts, OTAs, things like that. Because we can't trust the players to work out on their own, so we got to control what they do to make sure they're ready for game one every season. So early in the season, we don't see the list of injuries be as long as it currently is or get even longer. Thank you for listening to the episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. If you're not on Twitter and you would love to connect with the podcast, send your emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for new podcasts to listen to that come across this one. They remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we're more willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode number 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. This has been episode 136 of the Jay Stevens Podcast. I'll see you next time.